This is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Today, I'm happy to welcome back Rose from the Fiction Fixation podcast. You'll remember Rose and Courtney came on to talk about rom-coms a few episodes ago. Rose has been doing an amazing job analyzing my newest trash addiction, Tell Me Lies, and is here to discuss the show now that season 2 has officially wrapped. Welcome back, Rose.
Thank you, Nat. Thanks for having me. This is going to be so much fun. I'm excited.
I've been bragging about you. I'm like, so my friend has been so smart about this dumpster fire show that I'm addicted to because I love mess. And she's been actually using her brain, and it actually makes me feel like this show is valid.
Yeah, it's funny, like deep diving into a show that's so heavily smut because it's such a smutty show, but there is a lot there to unpack.
Well, because I remember that the only reason I watched this show is because Julia Washington of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous kept telling me how toxic it was and she hated it and it was making her uncomfortable and she hated the book and it was so uncomfortable and I was like, I have to watch it. I love mess. I I don't feel when things are uncomfortable. I have to. And I remember my initial thought being, will people understand that this can still be smutty, but also very dangerous and nothing that you should want? And I feel like that's when I would like classify this as a dark romance. I'm always worried about getting into dark romance because I'm like, I don't think people actually understand that this isn't cute.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a dark romance. I think the show does do a good job at portraying like all of the anxiety and negative outcomes of being in a relationship like this. So I don't think it's romanticizing it. There is like such a dark energy behind the show. It's not like a Gossip Girl type thing because when you look at Gossip Girl, it had kind of similar drama and manipulation, but it was very cutesy. This is not.
No, this is the opposite of cutesy. And I think that's why I love it because we've talked before about how I'm a huge Cruel Intentions fan and how I was like, I would watch a million Cruel Intentions. This very much feels like the Cruel Intentions for the 2020s.
Yeah, I would say Cruel Intentions was more portraying these type of things as cool. It was portraying manipulation and backstabbing as like sexy and cool. And the thing about Tell Me Lies is that even though it is riddled with sex scenes, and the sex scenes are like 10 out of 10,
10 out of
cat-
10.
like the chemistry, the acting, very, very good sex scenes. Um, Even though it's riddled with them, when you really pay attention, they are not gratuitous 100%. They like inform the dynamics between the characters, which I found fascinating.
Yeah. Especially when, and we'll get into it. I chose to plan this episode out from the women's perspectives first because I think that this show is really a tribute. And it was my sister's friend who was like, when you sit there and you remember that these are 19-year-old babies and that they're depressed women, then you start to be like, oh, I remember being in instances like this. And I'm like, oh, I should get off my high horse because it is hard. Like being a woman who's gone through all of this and then like watching women act this way. And you're like, that's not girl power. Like, that's not
Yeah.
what we're doing anymore, ladies.
Yeah, but it's so relatable. I think the writing is so honest. Like even the dialogue, which I feel like sometimes in teen dramas and young adult dramas, the writing is so like you could smell the old men sitting in a circle being like, and then they say dope, and then they say, you know, what's going on, my dudes, or whatever. Like it usually sounds so stale. If you listen to the dialogue in the show, it's so natural. Like you literally feel like you're listening to normal conversations.
Yeah, it's not Lucas Scott just quoting The Catcher in the Rye to his naked girlfriend in the car.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. Like growing up, what we were exposed to, like say like when I was like 10 years old watching Dawson's Creek, I thought that teenagers were like intellectuals.
I know, like, we would be smart.
Yeah. Ma'am, they are not.
No. And I also think that the Dawsons and the One Tree Hills, and I never watched OC, but I hear it was popular. I feel like they gave us this like idea that being a teenager was truly just like another false adulthood. So everything should be like high intellect and I'm above this and snooty and snobby. And I like took on that personality in my teens onto my early 20s where it's like, I'm above the mess.
Right. Yeah, you did feel like you had to be this fast talking, like sarcastic Gilmore Girl character. Like that's how I felt. And I think a lot of millennial women could probably relate to that.
Yeah. And then this is what I've been telling people about Tell Me Lies season 2. And if you haven't watched Tell Me Lies, I'm gonna spoil everything. And that's my right as a person with a microphone.
Yeah.
um, it's on Hulu. Go binge it right now.
Yeah.
I so Tell Me Lies centers around this group of friends, bad friends to one another in college, but there's also flash forwards of them in their adulthood at two of the main cast members' wedding. And it's all about like the different relationship uh dynamics that happen within that friend group. And a lot of the relationships I would classify as toxic and not ones that I would want to be in. But it really gets into the idea of how your mental health and mental dynamic goes into every interaction you have in a friendship or a relationship. And I have been telling people at the tail end of this season that I would have loved to have gone back in time and been messier when I was in my 20s. I was like, I could have ruined lives and I chose not to, and I regret it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, in retrospect, it's like I would have, like hand on hip, wagging finger, boy, let me tell you something. But
Yeah.
the truth is, like, we were all digmatized by someone's dusty son at 19.
Someone's son that looks like a thumb.
Yeah, he was just, yeah, ruining our lives.
And I think that is something that I think is brilliant about this show is that the constant way that the women are truly thinking in their head, I have the upper hand here. I am the one enacting sexual favors for power. I have the pussy violence on my side and I'm in charge. And the like way that we get, because I know that I've been caught up on that where it's like, it's all on my terms because I'm the one choosing all of this. And then, like, just days upon days and scenes upon scenes of that getting wiped out from under the women. And I'm like, I've also been that girl where it all comes crashing down.
Yeah, no, I think that is absolutely like such a relatable concept that young women sometimes mistake male desire with like males valuing them. That somehow it correlates. Like the more I am desired, the more I am valued. And it doesn't work. It's not real.
Yeah, we just had an instance on Love is Blind. I don't know if you're clued into this, but there was a couple that were having sex, probably one of the more not urgent, but like they were one of the earlier couples having sex on the show during the like honeymoon phase or whatever. And they get home and she has PMS symptoms or the flu or she's just tired. And she like denies him sex one day. And then she also says, hey, also, all of these symptoms that I'm experiencing get worse when I'm on birth control. So if you don't want kids soon, then we have to start using protection and we have to start using condoms. And all of a sudden, he's doing like the slow, polite breakup where it's like, I've just been thinking things over and I don't know if this is anything that I want to get into. And she's so confused because in her head, she's like, I'm literally still offering to have sex with you. Like we can still have a sexual relationship. I just need like the next 4 days off while my hormones realign or whatever." And he's like, "Intimacy is really important to me. And like condoms are a really big blocker of the intimacy that I'll feel with you." And he's like
Oh my god.
weaponizing woke therapy language. And I was like, oh my God, there it is. The example of you can be having sex with them. And then the moment that you're not, they're like, oh, that's right. I never viewed you as a person, anyways.
Oh man, I'm not caught up to that episode, but I definitely have been seeing clips on TikTok and it is awful, especially because like in that instance, it's real people, so it's kind of like, oh girl. And also like these conversations being like public, they're archived, like they're part of the zeitgeist now. Like I could never, but when you look at Tell Me Lies and the girls in Tell Me Lies, like literally every single one of them views sex as like a way to reel men in.
Yeah. And it's in very different ways because I think so. Megan Oppenheimer, I think, recently came out and said that Brie was her favorite character. Or did you say that Brie was your favorite character? Like,
Megan Oppenheimer and I are indistinguishable.
indistinguishable. Someone somewhere looked me dead in the eye on the
Yeah.
internet and was like, Bree's it. And I do find Bree so fascinating because, in a way, Bree is the closest to running this game in like the almost correct way
Yeah.
to where she's actually getting the more gains out of it. But at the end of the day, it still just gets like completely wiped out from under her to the point where I'm like, oh, that makes me sad because Bree's actually nice.
Yeah. So Bree, when the show starts, Bree is a virgin and she is just desperate to lose her virginity because she sees it as like a blocker for a normal college experience. She's like, if I could just, you know, cut my hymen, like I could enjoy myself and be, have fun in college. And that concept, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because on one hand, I love the idea of not making a big deal out of losing your virginity. Like it's not a soul pack, it's not witchcraft. Like it's not that serious. And I think sometimes it can be devastating for young women when they attach all this like meaning and like symbolism to it. But then on the other hand, her wanting to just like kind of give it up to the first dude that she comes across is also not super
It's not great.
super tactful.
I will say that when I was a sophomore in college, I was having a very similar situation to Bree, whereas I was like secretly orchestrating these two guys into taking my virginity. And it was like, whoever's going to go for this first gets it. Like,
Was was it like a raffle
yeah,
situation?
whoever answers this text message first, you're getting it. Congratulations. And it was because I was like, I'm just bored of having this. And I do feel like if I didn't have this anymore, all of my sexcapades and all of like my racy gossip girl, One Tree Hill, Brooke Davis lifestyle could just begin. But it's this whole idea of the mythology around female virginity that like it's too much pressure. Let's throw it in the garbage and whatnot. And I also had so the guy that ends up Brie has sex with for the first time, she never discloses to him that she's a virgin, which I'm like, power move. They don't need to know any of our business. But someone does. Like someone lets it slip. And he gets so indignant about it. And he's like, I can't believe that you would put all of that pressure on me because a man is nothing but fearful that you might actually like have feelings attached to him and he's responsible for those feelings.
Right. Yeah. So he was subscribing to that idea of like, oh my gosh, if I screw a virgin, like that's it. she's in love with me.
She's obsessed with me. And I had a very similar thing happen to me where, like, after the fact, after I had already done up and given away my virginity, been in a year and a half relationship, and then moved on to my next partner who had known me a while, he said something to the effect of, well, I knew that I wouldn't want to be the person who took your virginity. That felt like a lot of responsibility that I just wasn't into. And I was like, so you just waited until someone else did it? And then
That's
you were like,
weird.
and now I can have sex with Natalie. So, like, those myths
Right.
do exist.
Oh, 100%. I did love the realistic depiction of Brie losing her virginity and how anticlimactic it was and how bad the sex was. And it really makes me sad for young women out there everywhere that the truth is that these young guys, like, they don't know what they're doing.
No. Also, I loved that. So eventually she has sex with one of the core group members. His name's Evan, and he's actually like gentle and nice to her and does foreplay and I believe makes her come. And then the flash forward is Evan and Bree's wedding or like at least engagement party, I think in season 1. And I'm like, "Oh, I know so many women who, as soon as one guy was nice to them during sex and was like not just pounding into them like a flesh, what are those things called? Fleshlights? I wouldn't know. What are those called?
I'm like, I would very much like not to know.
Right. But like, as soon as some guy wasn't just like using her body and then like pushing her into a wet spot on the bed so he could have all the blankets.
Oh, gross. Oh my gosh.
As soon as one man was nice to you or against all odds made you come, they were like, this is the one I'm in love with. He cares about me the most.
Yeah, it was honestly kind of disappointing to see that Brie ended up with Evan. Granted, we don't see what happens in the in between because the show starts the beginning of her college career, and then the the future episodes are her as a grown woman getting married. But the thing about Evan and Brie's relationship is that it was so passive. Like, they didn't really choose each other. They were just kind of like bumped into each other by other people and then went, yeah, I guess. And it's not that I don't like them together because they both seem to have like mirror wounds and there's something about them that makes sense. There also doesn't seem to be any real like desire or passion like driving that relationship.
Yeah, no. I I have been rewatching season 1 since we decided to do this and I just watched the party where like Lucy during a drinking game is like every time that Brie drinks, Evan has to kiss her and they're like trying to orchestrate her away from Drew for sinister reasons. And like they fall into it or whatever, but then Evan gets pissed off that he's being a pawn and ends up having sex with Brie anyway, so I guess you rested on your morals for nothing. And and it is like it's one of those things where like I too also I think that this happens to women as like anyways, like in college, after college or whatever. It's the you were an arm's length away phenomenon where it's like, well, he was there and therefore I let him pay for my chilies.
Right. Well, I mean, when you think about it, evolutionarily speaking, I love that word. I think it kind of makes the most sense because, that's how we used to do things. It was just like there was just one dude in your village that you weren't related to, and it was him.
And it
Like,
was him.
that's it.
And yeah, and then we raised babies in packs of women and truly didn't even talk to that guy very often. And honestly, go back to that.
Oh my God. No, that makes so much sense, though. It actually makes so much sense that, like, if we are raising kids as a community of women, then like the choice of partner as far as like their personality or how they treat you is like actually not important back in those days because you just needed them to impregnate you. You didn't have to put up with them.
The whole Brie and Evan thing is fascinating because she truly dumps him. I love when people jump onto the easy out of a relationship. Like Ramses on Love Is Blind was like, no condoms, no wedding. like, like condoms, no thank you. And he jumped on the easy out. And Bree jumped on the easy out with Evan because he does admit to cheating on her. And then she's like, then I'm out.
I mean, was that the easy out though? Because she didn't immediately break up with him. She pretended to have had slept with someone else, and then his reaction told her what she needed to know. So I think she actually played it really smart. But I think she could only do that because of her attachment style. Like this girl is, she's a foster kid. She alludes to having a really hard childhood. Like people like that, unfortunately, are never fully like 100% invested because they're used to getting their heart broken. They're used to people disappointing them. So they kind of to keep themselves safe, they always kind of have one foot out the door. And I think that's girl boss, honestly.
Honestly, I think more of us should do that. I think more of us. I grew up in a tribe of women
Yeah.
who literally never made me believe that men, let alone their male partners, were important. And I think
Yeah.
I think we should be telling men daily, I don't even need you.
Yeah.
Should you disappear tomorrow, I don't know. Maybe I'd be sad for an hour. Like
Yeah.
I think we should go back to that.
I mean,
I think
yeah, I would say that it would be amazing. Society is moving towards that, but it would be amazing to be in a place where women are 100% choosing men versus being stuck with men.
yes.
Because too often women are stuck.
Yes.
They are financially stuck, they are stuck because of circumstances, and that sucks, dude.
Right. Which also adds another layer to the Brie and Evan relationship because he's fucking rich. Like he's fucking loaded. And I'm
Right.
also like, yeah, Brie, marry him and then get half of his
I know.
generational wealth.
It's so interesting though to think that Brie like first bat, she went to college and she met a millionaire. You
God,
like first try.
God, it's like the
She
plot
could
of Princess Diaries. Why not me?
yeah, well, I feel like she could do what those influencers do that kind of like try to teach people how to find millionaires. Like that could be Brie.
Let's put Brie and Evan to bed for a second and talk about, I guess we would call this the main couple of the show, our Lucy and our Steven, which Steven does look like a thumb. And I am very aware that the actress who plays Lucy is dating the actor who plays Steven, and I think that's really brave of her. So I just like to recognize that.
You're so mean.
I'm so I told you we'd laugh even though
Yeah.
this is
Yeah, yeah.
serious. I
No,
think
I
it's
love
really
it.
brave.
No, and you know what though? The thing is that the actor that plays Steven, he's not an ugly guy, but his performance is so slimy. It is unnerving. Like it gets under your skin. And I think that is what, kind of like makes him look less attractive because if you see him in interviews and you kind of see him outside of that role, you're like, "Oh, he's a handsome guy. Like he's fine, He's and I like that shows are moving towards casting average looking people. But like when you see someone average in Hollywood, you're like, wow, that's a thumb.
What
Like,
an uggo.
what an uggo. And
Yes.
really, they just look like regular people.
I think part of the problem is I find men distasteful as a baseline. And then have you ever been in an instance where you've heard a friend tell you a bunch of stories about a man and you've never seen a picture of him? So you're picturing like your whoever your baseline of good looking man is. And then you, through internet sleuthing, or she shows you an old picture from a party or whatever, get your eyes on that man. And he looks like he could have been living in a basement in the Goonies. And you're like, you let that man be mean to you? That's how
Yeah,
I feel about Steven. I was like, you're not good looking enough to be this mean.
no, and I do think that it was really smart of them to cast just an average looking Joe to have this like crazy appeal, like this like charisma, this, like sexuality that's like oozing from him.
Yeah, because he is magnetic. Like, I'm like, "Oh, I would have been had by him."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you look at, and I think about this, I think about all the time that if we didn't have Steven's point of view, we would completely have the wool over our eyes because what Lucy sees from the first couple scenes, the first couple episodes, is a guy who was like respectful of her boundaries, a guy who was there for her on the worst night of her life, a guy who, didn't try to sleep with her after the first date. Like he really seemed like green flags early on.
Mhm. And he also the thing that's diabolical about Steven is he invests time into caring about you without giving a shit about you. It's like just part of the entertainment value for
Mhm.
him.
It's performative. So, I mean, Stephen is a narcissist, and narcissists are really good at imitating that sort of behavior because they observe people. Like they know from pretty young age that like something is not right with them, and they learn that they have to put on a performance. Like, oh, I'm supposed to care when someone falls down. I'm supposed to run over and ask if they're okay. So they're really good at going through the movements. And honestly, like narcissists aside, I told someone the other day, I feel like men are getting too good at pretending
Oh,
because of all the media. Like I feel like romance novels and rom-coms, they're kind of giving men a script for how to be like Prince Charming.
I am also almost anti therapy because I'm like, men are using therapy against us to trick us, and they're using therapy language to make us be in this false sense of security, only to later tell us, well, I cheated on you and gave you syphilis, but this is why I did it, it turns
Yeah.
out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, it was all your
actually.
fault.
So, and like, I'm a big proponent of therapy, or at least I used to be, but then but then I did start to look at the way that my friends' partners would argue with them, and I'd be like, "That's gaslighting," except for he's using all the terms your therapist uses.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Like, well, if a narcissist goes to therapy, they're gonna get worse. They're not gonna get better. They're gonna get worse at manipulating people. But I think in general, because I used to be the same way, I used to be such a huge proponent of therapy. But the thing is that like therapy only works when you are being honest and forthright and when you are ready to like have hard conversations and admit like what you're doing wrong because a therapist is not supposed to call you out on your bullshit. Like that's what people don't realize. Like therapists are supposed to gently guide you towards realizations. And if you are not coming to those realizations, they're not going to slap you and be like, actually, you're the problem. They're just going to keep gently prodding you over years and years. So it could be actually really bad for some people.
Honestly, well, and it's like literally some people need that Roman guy from the Jenny Jones show who was just going to scream at you that you were a bad person. Like
Yeah,
some people need that.
that should be a service that we should be able to subscribe to
Yeah.
on
Except
behalf of other people.
yeah, but not in those like weird schools that they sent Paris Hilton to. Just like a guy
Yeah.
in a camo sweatshirt who screams at people if we
Yeah.
pay him.
Well, he like canvasses the neighborhood and knocks on the door and he's like, "Can I speak to the man of the house?"
Can I speak to the man who's gaslighting the lady of the house? And she just lines up her husband and her teenage sons and she's like,
Yeah.
have at all of them.
Yeah.
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 I I find Steven fascinating because I'm like, oh, I think I've been tricked by a nicer presenting Steven, where he put
Mhm.
in the time to learn just enough about my personality and enough about my ticks and my clicks and all of it to really create for me this fantasy land in my head, and then would say things like, I was scrolling on Tinder the other day, but I don't even know why because I know we're not serious or anything, but I really like you just to
Mm.
like keep me going.
Right, right. Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed this, but Lucy was, as we kind of mentioned earlier, she was trying to leverage sex to like get Steven to be exclusive with her. Like at one point she says, hey, I would like to not use a condom anymore, but but I just want to make sure you're not sleeping with other people. And what she is hoping he says is, oh, you got it. I won't sleep with anybody else, or I'm not sleeping with anybody else. And instead he says, hey, I would use condoms with other people. Like,
Don't
and
even worry.
that was so cringe because she doesn't even fight back. And I have to like I always I when I see those scenes, I think like, how would Diana react in that situation? Diana is Steven's longtime girlfriend who takes zero shit from him.
My queen, my goddess, my icon, Diana. I and I think what Lucy doesn't learn in season 1 is that for Steven, the sex doesn't matter at all. I think it's literally the game that he cares
It
about.
is the game because for the longest time, Diana wasn't giving him sex, and he was still chasing after her like a puppy dog. Granted, he was also chasing after Lucy and chasing after someone else. So, but it is about the game. And my God, we have to just stop and marvel at like this man's time management skills.
Yeah. He must be a journaler to keep all of his little lies straight.
He has an agenda. No, because like he is, he was seeing, I mean, spoiler alerts, he was seeing Lucy's roommate before the show even started and kind of like still keeping up with her once he started talking to Lucy and chasing after Lucy, but then he was also chasing after Diana, trying to get her back. So he's chasing after three women and he has a full horse load as well.
Yeah. I think what makes guys like Steven dangerous is that you think because we've been taught as women that sex is like our ultimate weapon and our virginity is the ultimate gift to give some buffoon. But guys like Steven have like gotten to the point where they're like, it's easy for me to get laid. This at all isn't like I literally it's like there's a line in James McAvoy's new movie, Speak No Evil, where his like buddy who's like in on all of the like horrendous violent crimes that James McAvoy is doing is like, we could have killed them right away. Why do you have to play with your food like you're my mom's cat? And I that in a very sick way can also be like, Steven knows that he can get laid. It's not about the meal. It's about playing with you and feeling like he's in control of you.
Yeah, I kind of felt like Steven was getting different um different supplies from the different women because like narcissists have they have different supplies. So there's like a primary supply and a secondary supply. And the primary supply is they need like admiration and they need to feel larger than life, grandiosity sort of thing. And the secondary supply is control. They need to feel in control. And I think he got the grandiosity from Diana because Diana would constantly tell him, like, you have such a brilliant mind. You're going to be so successful. Like, she thought he hung the moon. Like, she was projecting all of her greatness onto him.
And in a different way that because Lucy eventually also starts seeing other people too. And Steve, I don't know, what is Steven supplying for her? It must be the grandiosity thing. It must be that she feels like if she's keeping Steven's attention, it must be because it like speaks to her being spectacular or sexy or smarter than the game or whatever. Because she ends up like being thrown at these really nice guys who are like, hey, you're really great. And like, I would just like really like to date you and love you and cuddle you and whatever. And she's like, this is going to be great for 2 days. And then I'm going to want it to be icky.
Yeah. Well, I have a theory on that, but first I wanted to say, like, for Steven, what Lucy gives him is control. Like, you could see how, and this is what I mean that the sex scenes inform the dynamics between the characters, because when there is a sex scene or like a sexual tension scene between Steven and Diana, Diana's in control. She's kind of the one that's deciding if it's happening or not happening. She will literally, their very first sex scene, she stops him like mid thrust and she's like, I'm not ready, but like when you see the sex scenes between Steven and Lucy, he's 100% in control. He's got her wrapped around his little finger. And I think he loves that control. And even after, like in season two, when they were broken up, he starts, he gets close to her. He starts playing with the button of her pants, and she is like breathless. And he says, This is so embarrassing for you
It's
because he's
devastating.
it was devastating because he was basically saying, "I could fuck you anytime I want."
Yeah, and he knows it. And in a sick way, she knows it too. And there's part of me who's like, Steven and Lucy should just stay together for the safety of all of us.
Just to keep everyone else free from their toxicity. And yeah, that's such a good point too. And the reason why, like, personally, I stopped making excuses for the toxic narcissists in my life is because you could just say, oh, like it's just the way they are, or it's what they went through, or whatever. But ultimately, these people, they are like freight trains and they destroy everything in their paths. And when you look back at their lives, so for example, in the future episodes, when you look back at the carnage, like Steven has destroyed so many lives. He has hurt so many people. He has devastated, this young woman, Lucy, who was never the same. She's literally medicated now in the future. And it's like, enough is enough. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that luckily for Diana, she had a really good support system and she's brilliantly smart in all of it. Because to me, what I've learned about narcissism is the most dangerous position you can put yourself in is to not be impressed by them, is to watch them try to bait you with like their grandiosity or to like be grateful to them or whatever. And for you to say something like, that's not even how I like my steak cooked or whatever. Like, and then they're so unmoored because they're like, you should be like in love with me. And you're just like, but I'm not. Like, I'm not impressed by you.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what you said about Lucy, like what she's getting out of Steven. So I mentioned this in a TikTok video, and I think I might make a follow up because to me, it's very clear that the writers want you to know that Lucy has depression and that she's in a depressive state. And they do this in subtle ways at first. Like she has that conversation with her friends where she's just like, yeah, it's just hard. Like, when you get older, you just don't care about anything and nothing like really gives you joy or anything like that. And her friends stare at her like, what?
They're like, no, girl, we don't know that.
We don't know that. And but anyone who has struggled with depression is like, yes, I know that feeling. And so we see that. And then later on, when Lucy is in a relationship with like that bartender guy, she kind of describes something about her past. And he says to her, maybe you're depressed, and she rejects it so violently. She gets really upset. And then when we flash to the future, she's on medication. And so I think these kind of little, what are they called? Um,
Easter eggs.
these little Easter eggs are the writers telling us, like, this is what's wrong with her. And I love that they're portraying depression this way because of anybody else, like any other writer who wanted to portray someone as being depressed, they would have them in bed, unable to get up. And that's a spectrum, right? That's like on the far spectrum of depression. Depression exists on a spectrum. And some of the earlier signs of depression are just like you just don't care about anything. It's apathy. It's the inability to care. And my theory on why Lucy gets hooked on Steven is because when you are in that state where just nothing hits, nothing really sinks in, nothing makes you feel, you need extremes. So when people are in that level, anger is something that makes them feel alive because anger can always cut through apathy. And so I think Steven makes her feel something, something bad, but he makes her feel something. And I think that's why when she's like in normal relationships, she's just reminded of like how apathetic she feels and she needs to go back to feeling something.
No, you're so fucking smart because I have been on that spectrum of depression. Like, I had just texted you, like, oh, well, now that I'm out of my 4-day little bed sink, what if we recorded an episode? And, but I have also done the thing where it's like, okay, a chocolate chip cookie didn't hit. Maybe a milkshake will hit. Nope, that still tastes like stand. I should get in a fight with my dad.
And that
Like,
hits. That
and
hits,
that
right?
hits.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I'm going to call my best friend a dirty little bitch. Like, what if I got in a fight with someone? And I do remember just being in relationships where I'm like, I don't even like you because I don't like anything, but I do like how toxic and gross our sex is. And I do like the little thrill that I get because I can trap you up into a situation that isn't good for any of us. Like I am hopefully very honest on the show that I used to be like a toxic mean queen. I used to come around and be like I joke that I didn't do enough violence in my youth, but I did.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just feel like I could have upped my numbers. I think I was too concentrated on one person at a time and I could have spread that around a little.
You sent men to therapy.
I did. I did.
Yeah, no, and I think that's why I kind of want to make another video about it because I think it's so important to learn about that spectrum of depression because like I also personally when I was spiraling into a clinical depression that got really really bad, the earlier signs of that were like this apathy that could only be cut through with anger. And it just so happened it was a presidential election year. It was 2016, so there was like plenty of like reasons to be angry. And I remember kind of being addicted to that anger because otherwise I felt nothing. And the thing about apathy is that if you are not a sociopath, because sociopaths are generally pretty apathetic, it's hard for them to feel anything. Um, if you're not a sociopath, apathy is painful because you know it's not normal.
I would say that apathy and boredom are two big really triggers for me because I don't know what to like. Maybe not boredom so much, but like apathy mingled with boredom. And I'm like, I don't know what to do here. It's like, I, apathy is, I'd rather just be crying. Like, if I had just cried for the last 4 days instead of just staring at shows on Peacock and being like, I can't eat, I love sleeping and I'm not getting out a coloring book. If I had just been like crying and like screaming on the phone to my mom about how unfair it is and the election is stressing me out and I'm broke, that's at least momentum. I'm at least
Right.
doing something.
Like fixing, like working towards something. Yeah, apathy is so dangerous and it's so painful. And yeah, I do want to like I don't know, just because when I made a video on TikTok where I was kind of analyzing Lucy and how she when she first goes after Steven, it's because she knows that Diana is interested in him and she sees Diana as like everything she wants to be. So there's like kind of like connection by proxy situation there.
It is fascinating what we'll do when we're obsessed with another woman that is nowhere close to what if I was just friends with that other woman. Instead, we're
Yeah.
like, I'm obsessed with her,
Yeah.
and ergo, I'm gonna wreck her home.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, there is that competitive thing of it. But I think it was partly that. It was partly competitiveness, but I think it was also like, oh, she's vouching for him. Like if this exceptional woman dated Steven seriously, then he must be cream of the crop, you know?
Yeah, then we should all want him.
Right. Right.
Right.
And I think because she can't trust herself in the moment because Lucy is aware that she's apathetic, she's like, oh, like, actually, maybe I am attracted to him and I just don't feel it.
Exactly. Oh, that game of like, clearly I'm attracted to you because this is working out so well for me. Uh it contribute if I had spent less time apathetic and more time medicated, who
Mhm.
knows when the release of compulsory heterosexuality would have lifted from me and me be like, why aren't I attracted or even into the men that I'm obsessively manipulating?
Yeah, yeah,
Like, why?
right.
Why? I'm now worried that now I'm showing all my cards and it's like, I promise I'm not narcissistic. I just too am depressed, but I'm on meds now. It's fine.
Well, and you know what? That's like a good point too, because when I made that video about Lucy and how, her symptoms all point to depression, there were a lot of people that were commenting like, I think she's, she has borderline personality disorder. I think she has this. I think she's also a narcissist. Da da da. And like I'm refraining from like attaching anything else to her because depression is enough, but because I want to drive home the point that like depression makes you someone you're not. And like it's just such a complex disease and people like don't really understand it, and it's so important to understand it. And that's why I'm like really wanting people to realize that like everything Lucy is doing can be explained by depression. Like her bad decisions, her like thrill seeking behavior, like her self absorption that looks like narcissism is actually depression. Like depression is very it's a very like self-absorbed condition. Speaking as someone who struggles with depression, when I am deeply depressed, I have zero space for anyone else, for what anyone else is going through. Like it's all about this like internal chemical spiral. Again, it's that apathy and like you hate yourself because you know it's not normal, you know it's not you. And we see that with Lucy. She says multiple times like I don't even know, I don't even feel like myself, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like she says that over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I think, you know, another thing that mirrors my own depression journey, and I just realized on a rewatch of season one that the showrunners and the writers did me dirty by never telling me what happened to Pippa in high school where her dad is so concerned on whether or not her friends are being nice to her. Like it's the first question he asks where he's like she's like, "Yeah, I have a couple of friends. They're really nice. We'll see them later." And he's like, "But are they nice to you?" And I'm like, "What does that mean, dad?"
Well, and see, that's another thing to where like the writers did tell us supposedly what happened to Pippa, but the way it's set up in a way that like you're not 100% sure if it's true. Because what we see of Pippa throughout the season is that she is playing a role and she pretends to be someone she's not. So Pippa is actually also a virgin when the show starts, and she's pretending that she's like super sexually experienced and that she is like very promiscuous. And it's not true. And she also pretends that she has orgasms all the time, and it's not true. And it's like you can understand why someone would like make up these stories to fit in. But then when we get the scene where Pippa is talking to Lucy's new roommate, and Lucy's new roommate is a lesbian. And so now Pippa is telling her, like, oh, yeah, I like, there was some situation with a girl in high school. And, she basically alludes to the fact that she was bullied for being like either bi or gay. Um, and and but then the very next scene, we see her being disingenuous again, where like she had told this girl something and then she takes it back the next scene. So it's almost like the writers are telling us like Pippa's not telling the truth. Like don't believe her. Like did she make that story up just because she was talking to a gay person, or is it really what happened? Like you just don't know with Pippa.
And we still don't know in season 2. And what if it was the last? And I'll never know because as far as I know, the book ended in season 2. I can't even look it up on the internet because I'm not reading the book.
I do relate to Pippa though. I do relate to like how she has to create a persona to like protect herself. That's very relatable.
No, for sure. It's how I ended up straight up until my 30s. And I talk about this in a way that, like, I should have really been leaning on Pippa to give voice to this, where I tell people, like, I ended up in relationships with boys because all you ever hear growing up is wait until you meet a nice boy who changes your entire world. and no one tells you what to do if they change your entire world for the worst.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
there's no guarantee that that will be a good way that they're changing it, but you just hear it over and over again. So it's like people would be so blown away by how I handled breakups because people would be like, "Well, Natalie, like, are you okay? Do you want to go out? This, that, and the other." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Like, I cried about it and now it's over and I'm never speaking to him again. And they're like, "Oh, okay, queen." Like, "Oh, okay, moving
Yeah.
on, queen." And I think it's like, I was never that emotionally invested. And the one time I was emotionally invested, it was a fantasy land I was emotionally invested in. And I was deeply depressed and also feeling something for the first time in a while. So it's always just been fake and make believe and play pretend. And now I'm a 35-year-old who's like, well, what now? What even is truth?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you feel like the you felt sexual attraction for men previously, or do you think you gaslit yourself into feeling that?
It's really hard because part of the problem is before I lost my virginity, men love to like fill my head with these ideas of like, once you lose your virginity, you're just going to be so wild and wanton. And I was like a woman who was obsessed with the Evitas, the Anne Boleyns, these women who not just use sex to make sure that they had a meal the next day, but like, we're like, I'm using my sexuality to become queen,
To rule the world.
to rule the world. And I was always obsessed with women who used it in my mind to the betterment of their stature, life, station, whatever. So to hear things like you're going to be wild and you're going to be wanton and you're going to be the sexiest you've ever been because you're already so into it. And it's like, was I into it or am I as embarrassing as Pippa and I'm just screaming, ah, feeling nothing?
Yeah, right.
And men don't
Yeah.
know the difference.
That it's all performative, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on some level, a lot of it is performative for young women who are trying to like feel their way in the dark toward their sexuality because men are no help
No
in that
help.
regard, whether you're straight or not, like no help. You got to figure it out on your own. Um, so yeah, there is like a performance
Yeah.
to it.
Like, I tell people all the time, I was like, I was doing it all for the bit, so I had stories to tell
Yeah.
all of you people you're welcome.
It was for the plot. You took the D for the plot,
I
you
took the
know?
D for the plot, and then I was like, I and I think when I started to realize that like dicks horrify me, I was like, well, that's not a reaction that you should have. We're like the mere thought of one, and I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
don't bring it anywhere near me and don't let it look at me. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not a heterosexual thought.
Like, maybe.
Maybe. I'm like, so violent. Leave me alone.
Do
But
vaginas horrify you?
no.
That should have been a
That
sign.
should have been the sign. That should have been the sign. But it's hard. It's hard out here. And I do feel for Pippa because it is hard out here being women who just don't know. And you don't know what was fed to you. And you don't know what you decided on a survival basis or whatever. It takes a lot of deprogramming. And that deprogramming isn't going to happen in Wrigley's bed.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Because eventually Wrigley does make her come because he listens to her for 10 seconds.
Right, but I mean, it was also on her too. Like, we can't put it on Wrigley for not making her come when she was pretending to come. So it's like, if you are pretending that the guy is making you feel so good that you're finishing, it's not his fault. You're lying.
The Pippa stuff is so fascinating because we don't get a lot of her in the flash forwards either. And it's like, fill in these blanks for me. How did Pippa and Diana combine their iconic natures and become a power couple by the wedding? Like, I need to know.
Yeah. I saw the seeds being planted all the way from season 1, so if you're watching season 1, pay attention in the background whenever there's, like, a group event and Diana is there, you will always see her in the background talking to Pippa. Like, you will always see that happening. So, I feel like when I first watched it, by season 2, Pippa and Diana being nice to each other, it felt like it came out of nowhere. But when I rewatched season 1, I'm like, "Oh, no, they were friendly the whole time." Like, they were always kinda chit-chatting in the background, and obviously they've been building it in season 2, like, the longing stares, the kinda, like, weird questions, um so it's not like a complete surprise that they would end up together, but I think the showrunner did say that they didn't start dating until after college.
The showrunner has also come out to say that when it comes to some of these more visceral scenes that we have with Lucy, like she has sex with one guy and then she has sex with Steven, and then she immediately runs to the nice guy's bedroom and is like, we should get back together. And then he's like, oh, that should mean that we have sex. And she's like, yeah, sure, because I'm 100% not filled with sex juices from someone else. It's fine. Like,
That was so hard to watch.
it
Oh
was
my
so hard
gosh.
to watch. I heard that it was so hard to film. And Megan Oppenheimer said in an interview, she's like, I hope that people understand that, yeah, be hard on Lucy for that moment, whatever, but we're so unforgiving to women when it comes to things like that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you're right, Megan, icon.
Do you want to hear something really gross?
Yeah,
I read once that the reason men's penises are shaped the way they are is
horrifying.
because they are meant to scoop out the semen that is inside the vagina. So, like, they are supposed to be shaped like, like the little semi mushroom heads, and that's supposed to scoop out the old semen.
The
Isn't that
old semen
disgusting? Like, from the previous
from the
person.
previous person.
You cannot put this on TikTok. I will die.
This is why dicks are horrifying. I was right all along to scream at them whenever I'm
They're
unfortunate enough to see one.
they're like little spoons.
Little spoon.
They're like, "No, you're having my babies. I'm scooping out those soul juices." Anyway, so in Lucy's defense, nature has prepared for
Nature's
this.
defense. Also, men have bragged for eons that they can have sex dates for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and have it all be different women, and there's no way of knowing, and it's fine. But it is a this show is a really great study of the double standards that we have when it comes to women uh using sex as a tool compared to men using sex as a tool, and like how women are called diabolical and men are just like, well, that's who men are, they're shitty, and the language that goes along with it.
Yeah, well, when you see, like, I think it was the very first episode where Steven goes from like almost having sex with Lucy to then immediately going to his dorm room and penetrating Diana. Like, do you know what I mean? There
Right,
was
and there were
no
no
backlash
TikToks
there.
about that. There were no
Yeah.
TikToks about that. Who do you think is the biggest misogynist on the show?
Oh my goodness. Who do I think is the biggest misogynist? Well, okay, well, very kind of side character, but Lydia for sure.
Oh yeah, that internalized misogyny runs deep.
And that is really heartbreaking when the misogyny comes from women.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a whole episode about like what do you do when it's women who are letting you down in the fight against misogyny. And I think the tricky thing about Lydia is her brother drugs and tries to assault Pippa. We then find out that he's been successful at drugging and assaulting at least one other woman, which means that there are more. And Lydia has no room in her head to try and process that that might be reality. And I've already had women tell me like, no, but I get that, like why that would be hard. And I was like, I also understand, but I don't. I'm like, no. I would throw my own blood away over allegations. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I understand that there has to be a process of, like, accepting it because if from her perspective, her brother that she has known her whole life, she thinks he's a good person, he was raised right, and he says this didn't happen. Like, I understand that the inclination would be to believe him. But
But
I mean, and they we didn't really get information on like because we know there was a hearing about this like sexual assault.
but it was like a
Um,
frat hearing.
but yeah, we didn't really get like the evidence
No.
really.
And I think also, so then Lucy kind of co-ops Pippa's assault story, and she says that it happened to her to shut a guy up at a bar who's like, I can't believe that like bitches lie about this. Isn't that crazy? And Lucy's like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about because maybe she's not a liar because maybe it's happened to me. And then like it is in front of Pippa and Diana, and they're like, what the fuck? And I'm like, oh, that's also like a what the fuck moment. But I also like, I feel like that's something that, like, in the wrong moment, my fiery feminist ass would also be like, well, fuck you. It happens to one in four of us, and it happened to me, or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know that the showrunner, Megan Oppenheimer, was really worried about that plot point. Like she said like if there's something that's going to get us canceled, it's going to be that. And I don't know why they were so worried about it because they handled it really well. Like you could see in the moment Lucy like bubbling up. Like you could see how it was like a spur of the moment thing. And it's also a very Lucy thing to do. Like Lucy is very impulsive. And then the aftermath of it, having Diana confront her and say, how awful it is to lie about something like that. So I think they handled it well, but then also we know it's not a lie, like it's a proxy, right? Like it didn't really happen to her, but it did happen. So it was hard to really grasp that it was a really bad thing because the guy is a rapist. So it's not like anyone's lying about him being a rapist.
And I think that's like part of the problem. And I think that's like the deeper layer of it is that so often we know that these things have either happened to ourselves or women that we are close to, and we believe women. And as on a large scale, society and the law enforcement and the judicial system doesn't. So you're always at this like scarcity mindset panic when it comes to shit like that. And sometimes you're just so sick of people sticking up for rapists.
Right. Yeah, no. And then, but like I think in general, like, okay, so the way our justice system is set up, right? The way my bank account is set up, the way our justice system is set up is supposed to be to let 10 guilty people go to avoid convicting one innocent person. Like that is really the spirit behind the justice system is like if 10 guilty people go free, it's worth it if we don't put a single innocent person in prison, which obviously in practice it doesn't end up being that way, but that kind of philosophy of like if there's one person lying, is it worth believing them because the other 10 people are telling the truth? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the thing of like believe women because even if one of them is lying, it does more damage to not believe the one that's lying than to, you know what I mean? It does more damage. It's kind of the same thing. But and then also my viewpoint on it as well, it's like women, we are unfortunately, we are prey and we are preyed upon. And so it's kind of the same thing to where like if there's a child saying something happened to them, that someone abused them, like believe that child
Right.
because they are what's the word?
An
Like
at risk group. Yeah.
yeah, they're an at-risk group. So like if a child says someone abused me, we should believe them 10 out of 10 times, even if there's a chance 1 out of 10 times that they're lying.
Yeah. No, it, I, I didn't know that Megan had come out to like, me and Megan Oppenheimer are really close friends, and if she wants to be, cool. I didn't know that she had, like, said, like, "If there's one thing we're getting canceled on, it's that." Because I watched that and immediately went, "Oh, no, I exactly know why that happened." Like, sometimes you're just so fucking tired of it, and you have the one thing in your pocket that'll shut it down. And sometimes it's the thing that's in your pocket is technically someone else's, but you can bend it to a point where it still shuts it down because I'm tired. Like, I'm just so tired all the time of people being like, well, he's never been convicted.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It is disappointing, but it's also like, I mean, even when you look at a character like Steven, where it's like Steven has moments where he does good things, or he's there for people, or he holds Lucy all night as she's crying, or he shows up for Wrigley to be there for him. Side note, it was also beneficial for him. But like, people are complicated, and the idea that someone is a villain who twirls his mustache and only plots horrible things, like, that is such an antiquated way of looking at things. And it's why people take these black and white opinions of like, no, he could have never done these bad things because he did this one good thing.
Let's go ahead and do our what do you think has been your biggest lesson from Tell Me Lies and watching it and analyzing them all from a mental health level?
Well, I think I found it really interesting, like I said, the way that they're portraying depression. And I think seeing the comments that I'm getting on the videos that I've done is making me realize, like, oh, this is a conversation that needs to be had because people have a very like one note idea of what depression looks like. And it's a topic that's really like close to my heart. So I'm like, I definitely think that's worth talking about. But then also just like really seeing the devastation that toxic relationships have like over the span of your lifetime. Like you think like, oh, it was just a stupid boy who fucked with my head when I was 17, and then you're 35 and you're not recovered.
Yeah, yeah. See every other episode of this podcast.
Yeah, CC our entire existence.
Our entire existence. Well, and I think one of the things that people could take away from the show is too that like it's okay for this stuff to still have an effect on you. I talk about this a lot whenever we're talking about Taylor Swift, and people want to be like, I can't believe she's still dropping Easter eggs about Jake Gyllenhaal. Well, maybe Jake Gyllenhaal fucked her up in a very core wound way.
Right.
You ever
Yeah.
think about that?
Right. It's such a easy thing to say, like, just get over it.
Yeah,
But I think it's such a brave thing to say, no, I'm actually never fucking getting over it.
right. In fact, I'm talking about it every day. Every day, I'm going to look at
Yeah.
one person and be like, Jake Gyllenhaal, not a great guy.
Like, I will fucking die mad about it.
I'm
How
going
about
to die
that?
mad about it. Like, also, if you're mad that I'm still mad at Jake Gyllenhaal, then bitches can stay mad. That's my new thing to say now is that like when people like comment about something that I've done and they're like, "Meh, meh, 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 meh," I'm like, bitch, you can stay mad.
Yeah. Just stay angry. And it's not hard to do. It just feels like everyone online is just perpetually like triggered and angry about things that like make me realize that I always am operating on like a low level of depression because I'm
Yeah,
like the apathy just kind of comes up to where I just wonder like how are you this passionate about fucking anything?
about fucking anything, including like literally anything that I've said.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. What do you think would be a manifestation that you would like to offer anyone who sees themselves in the characters of Tell Me Lies?
I think the manifestation, let's see. You deserve better. You are better. You can walk away.
Hmm.
Like that sunk cost fallacy of like,
Oh,
oh, we've been dating for 4 years or whatever it is. It's like walk away.
yeah,
Drop it.
yeah. A friend told me on this podcast, maybe, that I was the only person who told her after the end of her marriage that 18 years didn't have to be her entire life.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh, I've got another one. I love this. I forget where I heard it, but I would love this phrase. If it's fragile, let it break.
Oh, let it break.
Like, let it break because we spend so much time. I don't know if it's a woman thing, but I feel like I see a lot of women that
Hmm.
just really spend a lot of time like nurturing things that are so fragile. And it
Hmm.
takes like so much mental effort, so much like of their lives, so much of their joy, like trying to like put bubble wrap around something that's super fragile. And it's like, hey, babes, maybe it was meant to break.
Yeah. I would like to manifest 22 years of Tell Me Lies. I want it to be a longer run than Grey's Anatomy, which is still actively running. um,
Yeah.
Grey's
Yeah.
Anatomy has stolen 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tune into it as soon as I get off this mic because I can't.
Is it still worth it?
No, but you know
Okay.
what it is? It's a comfort to know that every Friday I have a new Grey's, and it's like I've been
Yeah.
doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's just nice to know that I can do it.
So you're like just there's a trauma can that you're just kicking down the road
Just
until the day
kicking it down the I
until the
told
day they cancel this.
I told myself that I would leave when Alex Karev was done. And then Justin Chambers went bet. And then he left in a very stupid way and I got mad and kept going.
Yeah. I can't
So,
even remember when I stopped watching it, but the last the last thing I really remember is kind of like the aftermath of Derek dying. So it was a long time
yeah.
ago.
I will say that this is what actually happens. They keep bringing in women that I'm so attracted to on like a spiritual level, not even like they're beautiful women, but I'm
Yeah.
so into who they are. So did you ever watch that trashy show Rain, which was about Mary Queen of Scots, but it was like did you ever see A Knight's
No.
Tale?
Yes, Night's
So it
yeah.
was like A Knight's Tale doing Mary Queen of Scots. It's so good. I think her name is Adeline or Adelaide Kane or something like that. She's so hot. She's on Grey's now. And I think that she's just like a wickedly smart actress. So I was like, fine, I'm fucking back in. And then this week, they were like, Sophia Bush, anyone? And I was like, God damn it. I'll watch it till I die.
I'm all in.
I will do anything for Sophia Bush, it turns out, including tuning in to Grey's Anatomy Friday on Hulu. So I hope that Megan Oppenheimer, is that how you say her last name, or is that just the guy with the bomb?
Y- Yeah, I mean, I think so.
Okay, Megan, my good friend Megan.
Hmm.
I hope that she becomes like a household name as a showrunner because
Yeah,
I think she's doing, when you actually put down all of your baggage and how uncomfortable you are watching the show, I'm like, this is fucking masterful.
it's phenomenal.
She's doing someone understands either their own depression or someone else's because she's doing great.
This show has a sauce that's like really hard to quantify because on the surface, it has just very basic shit that other shows have, like the sex and the drama and like the young adults getting into like spike and also
Shenanigans.
like a mystery, like
Yeah.
different mysteries. So it has like very staple ingredients, but there's something about how it comes together in the sauce that I haven't felt this like engrossed in a show.
Yeah.
I don't think ever.
So I want her to be a household name. I want her to call me and for us to be friends. That's my manifestation. I want 22 years of Tell Me Lies because I'd watch this type of show about people who didn't even know Lucy. Like if it just becomes Grays where we throw away some cast members and put in other cast members, I'm
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that's the only way to make a show like this, like a legacy show, is you'd have to just graduate into a new class.
Yeah, like Degrassi, the next
Hmm.
generation.
For sure.
For sure. We love Degrassi.
Yeah, Degrassi is like it's funny, but Degrassi is like a little touch of Tell Me Lies,
It
but
is.
it's just not very subtle, you know?
It's well, and like Tell Me Lies feels like a very grown up, very smart, Pretty Little Liars.
It does. It's very subtle. It's oh gosh, like it's not showy,
Yeah.
It's not putting on a dance for you. It's making you work for it.
because I get a lot of shit for watching my freeform trash because I love freeform teen dramas. Like my sister texted me one time and she's like, "Now they're making one about mermaids. You gonna watch that fucking stupid show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." Teen
Funny you should
mermaids.
mention that.
Funny you should mention that. It's already saved on my Hulu list. But I feel like freeform gave me the training wheels for Tell Me Lies.
Mm, there you
You
go.
know,
Yeah.
it's all relative. Rose, have I mentioned lately that I'm so glad that you and Courtney are my friends on
Oh
the
my
internet?
gosh. We love you. We love you so much.
We love
Um
you. I love you. Make sure everyone knows where they can find all of your smart thinks about the movies and the TV that you are watching.
Oh my gosh, yes. So first of all, I want to lower expectations. They're not smart at all. They're usually very unserious. So like our whole thing is just like it's all satire and unseriousness. So if you want to check out our movie recaps, you can check them out on our podcast, Fiction Fixation. We do have a TikTok. I do have several more serious videos about Tell Me Lies, and I'm just kind of like debating how much longer I want to be serious because engaging with the internet in an earnest way is
Ugh,
really an exercise in like madness. I
yeah.
kind of just want to go back to satire.
Number one, they are smart things because people are so dumb when it comes to satire now that to continue to create satire and make it funny and good is brilliance because people are like, my favorite movie, Drop Dead Gorgeous. You think I could show a 20-year-old Drop Dead Gorgeous in the year of our Lord 2024 and have them get it? No.
Yeah, it's funny. I sometimes wonder, like, because we have mutuals and stuff that like message us when they listen to our episodes, and it's so amazing to like hear people's takes on it. But I'm like, man, there are like a lot of strangers out there consuming our podcast, and I have a lot of faith in them and in their intelligence because like sometimes I don't even know when we're being serious. Like sometimes like we just like dip in and out of like satire and comedy and then just being like really earnest and serious, and then the next thing we know we're just like, yeah, because we love the patriarchy, like
We love the patriarchy. That I mean, that's one of the pillars of To All the Men I've tolerated before.
that's everything you stand for, right?
It's everything I stand for. Honestly, if the patriarchy ended tomorrow, would I be happy or would I be sad that the show had to be over? I don't know. I don't
Right.
know.
So you admit on some level.
On some level, I need it for the drama and the adrenaline for my
Yeah.
apathetic days and the
Right.
melancholy.
There you go.
Well, everyone, you can see us on Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram. There's YouTube. There's TikTok at NadleyK124. And that's also my personal Instagram in case you want to figure out what I'm doing. Um, I'm putting my face back on the internet, believe it or not. And I'm
Yay.
making a diligent effort to make misogyny funny. So why don't you join me? Because I think misogyny is so laughable. And if we
Well,
keep laughing at it, they're going to be so mad.
yeah, misogyny really is so unserious. It's
It's
like,
so
really?
unserious.
Like, really?
Make sure to check all of that out. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including people diluting your depression just down to like the really big sads.
Mm.
Smiles are for joy, and your depression is more than the big sads.